Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As a curtain raiser to this afternoon, we present a film remembering Professor G. Ram Reddy. For some of us who've had the opportunity to work with him and interact with him, this film will steep us in memories, while for some others, it would serve as a quick introduction to the reverence in which we hold him as the architect of distance learning in India.
एक डगर चुनूं ऐसी जिस पर चलकर दुनिया को बदल सकूं, एक राह बनाऊं कुछ ऐसी अवरुद्ध मार्ग जो खोल सके, अज्ञान बिंधी काली कुंठित रजनी का तंबी तोड़ सके, जो ज्ञान रश्मि की आभा से पूर्वे घरवे को जगा सके, विद्या विमुक्ति की क्रांति हेतु सब द्वार बंद मैं खोल सकूं, एक डगर चुनूं ऐसी जिस पर चलकर दुनिया को बदल सकूं।
ओपन यूनिवर्सिटी से देश के कोने कोने तक शिक्षा पहुंचेगी। इसमें कोई लाइन नहीं लगी होगी कि खाली जो कई हजार की फीस दे सकता है वो भर्ती हो।
सन 1985 में तत्कालीन प्रधानमंत्री राजीव गांधी ने गरीब, मजदूर, दलित और आदिवासियों के द्वार पर विद्यालय पहुंचाने के इरादे से इंदिरा गांधी राष्ट्रीय मुक्त विश्वविद्यालय की स्थापना का दायित्व प्रोफेसर जी रामा रेड्डी को सौंपा। प्रोफेसर जी रामा रेड्डी इग्नू के पहले उपकुलपति बने।
My ambition has been to keep an all India image of this institution. We have consciously brought people from different parts of the country. This has been done consciously so that it remains an all India institution, doesn't become a local institution.
आंध्र प्रदेश के करीमनगर जिले में बसे एक छोटे से गांव मयलारम में प्रोफेसर रेड्डी का जन्म हुआ। प्रोफेसर रेड्डी के माता-पिता शिक्षा से अछूते थे, पर प्रोफेसर रेड्डी ने शिक्षा में ऊंची उड़ान भरी। हैदराबाद के उस्मानिया विश्वविद्यालय से एमए करने के बाद लंदन स्कूल ऑफ इकोनॉमिक्स से उन्होंने उच्च शिक्षा पूरी की। भारत आते ही वो उस्मानिया विश्वविद्यालय में लेक्चरर नियुक्त हो गए। इस दौरान उन्होंने कमला रेड्डी से विवाह किया और 3 संतानों के पिता बने।
When I came back from UK, I should join the private sector, but under the influence of the Labour Party, we felt that we should not serve the private sector. Therefore, I joined as a lecturer. And once I joined as a lecturer, there was no other ambition except to continue in the profession. When you are a lecturer, you want to become a reader. When you are a reader, you want to become professor. All that, I must say, I have been able to get that these promotions fairly quickly and rapidly. Maybe the society was very generous to me, very kind to me.
उस्मानिया विश्वविद्यालय के पद पर रहते हुए प्रोफेसर रेड्डी डिस्टेंस एजुकेशन से जुड़े। उन्होंने सन 1982 में भारत के पहले मुक्त विश्वविद्यालय की स्थापना की। सन 1985 में प्रोफेसर रेड्डी इंदिरा गांधी राष्ट्रीय मुक्त विश्वविद्यालय के संस्थापक उप कुलपति के रूप में नियुक्त हुए।
When the bill for setting up this university was introduced in Parliament, we were under the impression that it would be taken up in August session. First it was introduced in Rajya Sabha. We were told that the bill has to be considered by the Select Committee of Parliament. It means lot of time. It would take maybe 2 years, maybe 3 years. There were a few other bills which were before the Select Committee, which were not clear. Then the Joint Secretary told me that, Professor Reddy, now you can think of going back. This bill will not be clear in this session. Maybe it will take 2 or 3 years. Select Committee will take their own time. They would like to examine the things carefully. I thought I made a mistake of my life. Not so much about the career. I had made certain commitments for the university, on behalf of the university, thinking that university was going to be set up and these things would be required. So we had already made some financial commitments. What would happen to those commitments? The most important commitment, for instance, was purchasing of books from UK, all the books which were produced by the UK OU. I think the cost was around 2 lakhs. So when the university is set up, people will ask for those books. And if we had ordered for the books then, it would take another 6 months. So with a view to save those 6 months, I placed an order. Now if the university was not going to be set up, what will happen to these commitments? I was very much worried. Then I went and saw the minister and also the secretary. Minister, as I said, was Mr. Pant. Secretary was Mr. Answarup. Both of them said, no, it must be discussed during this session. We'll see what we could do. Again, I think Mr. Pant intervened, must have seen the Prime Minister, saw to it that it was taken up for discussion. This decision of the Parliamentary Advisory Committee was changed. But these are some of the critical decisions. If he had not intervened and the PM had not agreed, I don't know how long it would have taken to set up this university. And these are the decisions which gave me a lot of worry also at one point. Now I can look back with a lot of satisfaction.
इग्नू अपनी तरह का एक अनूठा विश्वविद्यालय ही नहीं, ये सामाजिक विकास का एक आंदोलन है। ये आंदोलन शिक्षा के द्वारा समाज में समानता, न्याय और सशक्तिकरण की परिवर्तन धारा प्रवाहित कर रहा है। शिक्षा का ये विशाल आंदोलन आने वाले वर्षों में ऐसी सामाजिक क्रांति का चक्र बनेगा जिसके सहयोग से भारत से अशिक्षा और अल्प शिक्षा का अंधकार समाप्त हो सकेगा।
And I have no doubt in my mind that this university will leave impression on the educational system of this country.
नश्वर शरीर लेकर तो सभी इस रंगमंच पर आते हैं, पर कुछ ऐसे विरले महामानव भी होते हैं जिनकी स्मृतियां सदियों तक महका करती हैं।
May I now request Padma Vibhushan Professor M.V.S. Valiathan, the distinguished speaker for the day, the Honorable Vice-Chancellor Professor Rajsekharan Pillai, the Pro-Vice-Chancellor Professor Parveen Sinclair, and Dr. A.K. Agarwal, Professor Health Sciences, to come to the dais so that we may begin our proceedings for the day. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Indira Gandhi National Open University, it is my privilege to welcome you all to the 15th Professor G. Ram Reddy Memorial Lecture, which will be delivered today by National Research Professor Padma Vibhushan, Dr. M.V.S. Valiathan. Professor Valiathan is a reputed cardiothoracic surgeon, a renowned scholar and author, and I dare to say, the man who has ushered in modern healthcare into India. Sir, we are honored to have you today with us. I also extend a warm welcome to the faculty and staff at the regional centers, all our viewers of Gyan Darshan 1 and 2, and to all our listeners who are tuned in to 37 Gyan Vani stations across the country as this program goes on air live. Every year, on the 2nd of July, Indira Gandhi National Open University holds a memorial lecture to honor the memory of its founder Vice-Chancellor, late Professor G. Ram Reddy. I feel privileged to get this opportunity to say a few words about Professor Reddy. People remember Professor Reddy for his multifaceted personality, for the many things he passionately pursued. They remember him as an erudite scholar of public policy and administration, or as India's foremost expert in distance and open learning. But most of all, for us who had the opportunity and privilege of working with him, remember him for his wonderful nature, for his caring, and for his generosity. It was amazing for us who had just joined as lecturers at that time, how accessible he was whenever we needed him. In fact, he inspired in us the confidence to take forward the concept of distance education that was still new to us at that time. On this special occasion, we are very fortunate to have with us Mrs. Pramila Reddy attending this lecture. Madam, I welcome you to the stage as we light the lamp and pay homage to the memory of Professor G. Ram Reddy. Madam. I now request Professor Valiathan and the other dignitaries on this dais to light the traditional lamp and pay floral tribute to Professor Reddy. Thank you, Mrs. Reddy. We feel indeed privileged to have you with us today. May I now request Professor Parveen Sinclair, the convener of the lecture series, to deliver the welcome address.
Thank you, Geeta. Professor Valiathan, an alumnus of IGNOU in a sense, welcome back. 2 years ago, he was conferred with the honoris causa Doctor of Science for many of the things that Geeta Kekar has just mentioned, all his great learning that he has shared with everybody, the devices that he developed for the poorest of the poor, Sri Chitra that he brought up to really make available to the poorest of the poor, I would say, in line with what Professor Reddy had wanted for education generally. Again, going to the poorest of the poor, to the last person. Welcome, sir. Professor Pillai, welcome. Dr. Agarwal, all the guests of the dais also, and who are listening, viewing the webcast, viewing Gyan Darshan and listening to the Gyanvani stations. Welcome to everybody to this 15th lecture, which is going to be focusing on medical education. Here I would like to take the opportunity of saying a few words about Professor Valiathan also and Professor Ram Reddy before I pass the mic on to the others. Professor Valiathan is very unassuming, very professional personality, and very much a part of the movement in the country that cares for the people as a whole. He's more recently involved with trying to improve medical education. He was also, I know him well for the AIIMS suggestions, the report that you gave, because I'm closely linked with the AIIMS on other counts, so that's how. And as far as our School of Health Sciences goes, he has been advising quite a bit also in the cardiology section, as Professor Shetty has been also helping us a lot on that count. Professor Valiathan doesn't look his 76 years. I'm sure he doesn't feel it, and I hope we would be even at least 10% of what he is by the time we reach that age. Professor Ram Reddy was very, very similar. Very young at heart, young in spirit, and caring as the word she used. Dr. Kekar used the word caring. He would treat everybody with, equally, with respect. This morning only I was talking to Mrs. Pramila Reddy. We were reminiscing about some of the things in the good old days. And just thinking how he would consult everybody. He may take a decision that he agreed with only ultimately, but he did consult everybody, and he gave weight to everybody's word on that count. And as I have said also in the write-up in the invitation, sense of humor, a very quiet sense of humor, very good, and sense of integrity, very high. I don't have to say more. To many of the people over here know what I'm saying, and they relate to what I'm saying. So thank you again for being over here, everyone. And particularly, of course, Professor Valiathan. Have a good listening time today.
This day affords us a certain perspective when we turn to look back at the milestones that we have crossed. To look back at the time when Professor G. Ram Reddy set out to sow the very seeds of our institution, and along the years to this day, when under the leadership of Professor Rajsekharan Pillai, we move into new territory with the concept of distant learning along with direct instructions. I remember that our university began by offering only just 2 programs. Today, there are more than 350 programs being offered, with emphasis being placed on vocational as well as research programs. We have indeed taken forward the vision that began with the objective of widening access for all the sections of society, and in just 25 years have contributed significantly to higher education, community education, and continual professional development. Professor Pillai espouses the traditional Indian values of education, tempering it with the most modern global methods to take on challenges that are very uniquely our own. May I request the Honorable Vice-Chancellor, Professor Rajsekharan Pillai, to welcome Professor M.V.S. Valiathan with this sapling of the Arjun tree to honor his contribution to the practice of modern healthcare and for the spirit that drives him to uncover our Ayurvedic traditions for the coming generation. The Arjun plant has the botanical name Terminalia arjuna, and it is indigenous to India, and it is used in Ayurveda and Unani systems of medicine for its curative properties in cardiovascular diseases. So I think it's an appropriate gift for Professor Valiathan. Ladies and gentlemen, now may I invite the Honorable Vice-Chancellor, Professor Rajsekharan Pillai, to deliver the presidential address.
Most respected Professor M.S. Valiathan, today's chief guest and distinguished educationist, medical scientist, and a person who is blending the modern medicine with the traditional Indian systems of medicine. My colleagues from the university, Mrs. Pramila Reddy, other distinguished invitees, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, on behalf of the university, let me welcome Professor M.S. Valiathan to our midst. When I invited Professor Valiathan for this lecture, he was all the more happy that he considered it a great honor because Professor Ram Reddy was one of his very close friends, and for laying a new university in the private sector in the country, Professor Valiathan and Professor Reddy, when he was the University Grants Commission chairman, they worked together, and he was really happy to accept our invitation. There is no need of introducing Professor Valiathan to an audience of this kind. Even now, he is very active. Several years after retirement from the government service, he tried to revive or learn Sanskrit, and then given a translation for the Charaka Samhita, which was published by the Indian National Oriental man, but when you are the president of the Indian National Science Academy, and this is one of the great contribution he has made. He is trying to bring back and then blend our traditional systems of medicine to the modern systems of medicine. I used to know Professor Valiathan from 1983 or 1984 onwards, sir. I was heading a university department which has focus on polymer science in Kottayam, Mahatma Gandhi University. Then for several years, has been the director of the Srisa-An Institute of Medical Sciences. And I came to know of him through an editorial in Current Science by Ramasheshan. There was an editorial in Current Science by Ramasheshan about a distinguished medical scientist coming to Sri Chitra Tirunal and then introducing the Sri Chitra heart wall. And in the area of medical technology, I think a lot of innovations has happened in this country. Many of these innovations are from the Sri Chitra Tirunal Institute of Medical Sciences, whether it be the Sri Chitra heart valve, which is 1/3 or 1/3 of the price of the ordinary imported ones. And then the blood bag. And in the area of medical technology, in medical entrepreneurship also, lot of innovations which happen from Sri Chitra Tirunal Institute of Medical Sciences helped the country. And in starting a biomedical technology wing, and then biopolymer composites, this institution has created lot of facilities. In addition to that, in the public health area also, with the help of the Kerala government, a public health Sri Achyutamenon Center for Public Health, that is also a remarkable institution which is looking after the public health system in the country. And these are, of course, just now he was asking what is there in medical education in the university. I just told him that we have School of Medical Sciences, but he was mentioning that medical education and health education are definitely two different things. We have to look at both aspects. And in this connection, I'm also happy, sir, to inform you that we are now, with the advice of Dr. R. Chidambaram, we are licensing a collaboration with the Sri Achyutamenon Center for starting masters in public health. With the collaboration of this institute, we are in dialogue with them. This university, sir, this is the silver jubilee year of the university. On 19th November 2009, the President of India inaugurated the silver jubilee activities of this university. In this silver jubilee year, this university, in terms of student numbers, we are the largest university in the world, 3 million students. As Dr. Kalkar mentioned, from 8,000 or 4,000 students in 1985. Now we are a university with 3 million students spreading across the country and even spreading our wings in several developing countries. And we have also started programs in developed countries. For example, last year we started a center in London. Several requests are there for starting our centers in various developed countries also. We have international collaborations. And this institution during the last 25 years proved to be a success story in democratization of education, training and capacity building. And this could be a model for scaling up education and training for many fastly developing, highly populated countries. And our colleagues, our faculty members, they are providing leadership, they are providing guidance to establish such systems even outside the country. And the topic you have selected today, medical education in a melting pot, that is, of course, I don't have to say more about it. It's very relevant, very relevant, because every day we hear about the establishment of the new councils for higher education and a separate council for health education, human resources in health education and all that. I think this topic is also very relevant. I understand that according to the World WHO reports, 36% of the medical human resources for the whole world will be from India. That is the WHO report by 2015. And if you just look at the developing countries all over the world, we have the largest medical system also. And the medical schools in India produce the largest number of doctors than anywhere else in the world. And during the last 2 decades, we have also seen a lot of controversies, lot of conflicts when in the establishments of these medical schools, their quality, relevance, and all that. And therefore, this topic is also very relevant. And on my personal behalf and on behalf of the university, I extend you, sir, once again a hearty welcome to the university, and we will be definitely looking forward to suggestions for improving the health awareness activities in this country through way of technology or through way of the various activities which we are doing. And I also take this opportunity to pay my tributes to Professor Ram Reddy, the founder of this institution, who has paved the way for providing education and training capabilities for millions of people in this country and abroad. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. You have very aptly introduced the speaker to the audience. I'm certain we'll be learning a lot from what Professor Valiathan has to tell us about medical education in the melting pot. And, sir, I invite you to present the 15th Professor G. Ram Reddy Memorial Lecture.
This only. This only. Yeah, that's okay. This will be.
Yes, you need this.
Thank you. Esteemed Vice-Chancellor, Professor Rajshekhar Pillai, Mrs. Ram Reddy, Professor Sinclair, Professor Agarwal, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. We are gathered here to pay homage to Professor Ram Reddy, the founder, Vice-Chancellor of IGNOU, a distinguished scholar of political science, an outstanding educationist, a builder of institutions, and above all, a great human being. Professor Ram Reddy had his education in Osmania University and the London School of Economics, and from even in those days he was fired by this enthusiasm to increase the access of higher education. No wonder he was the founder of the B.R. Ambedkar Open University, and as a builder of institutions, he was responsible for the NAC, National Assessment and Accreditation Council. And he occupied many high positions, Vice-Chancellor of Osmania University, Vice-Chancellor of IGNOU, the Chairman of the University Grants Commission, and the Chairman of the ICSSR, and Vice-Chairman of the Commonwealth of Learning. And rich in attainments, rich in honors, he also had a tremendous sense of humor. I once remember an occasion where we were both attending a discussion about the different systems of medical education, and the discussion became rather heated, and Professor Reddy intervened in his own inimitable way, gentle, completely unruffled. He said, well, you know, I have been a beneficiary of all these systems of medicine which are being discussed. Homeopathy, naturopathy, allopathy. But I can tell you, finally, I came to Tirupati. So he brought down the audience. I can never forget all the heat disappeared with that one intervention. It's a great privilege for me to speak in his honor today, and I'm deeply grateful to the Honorable Vice-Chancellor and his colleagues for this invitation for me to speak here on this occasion. When we talk about medical education, we have the impression of a big building, big hospital, doctors going with white coats, etc. But it is good to remember that medical education was here for a long time ago. That's why I thought I should bring up this old story. If you read Buddhist literature, you will find lots of references to University of Taxila, which is Takshashila, which is now in Pakistan. And in Buddha's time, it was already a very well-established university, especially known for medical education. And this is, we also had in parallel a Gurukula system. University was in Takshashila, centralized, difficult to get admission, etc. But we also had at the grassroots level plenty of Gurukula systems. And if you read the Charaka Samhita, it is simply a series of discussions held in an ashram with no more than 10 participants, and Atreya is in the chair. That is how most of the Charaka Samhita chapters are in the form of discussions. That's how in Gurukula system Ayurveda was taught in those days. In the universities, not only Ayurveda, but all systems, all types of knowledge, including mathematics, metaphysics, they were all taught. Now, Takshashila, the most outstanding alumnus was Jivaka, who was Buddha's physician. A great deal about him is known in the Buddhist literature, and we find that there was an admission procedure. Either a senior professor could select on the basis of his own interview, or they had to go through a committee called Dwara Panditas. Two types of admissions in Takshashila. And Jivaka was admitted directly by a professor. And there was a fees they had to pay. For a medical student, it was 1,000 masurans, whatever coin it was. And Jivaka was poor. He had traveled all the way from Pataliputra. He was an orphan, traveled all the way to Takshashila to study medicine. And when he was interviewed, the professor was greatly struck by his intelligence, this teenager. He asked him, "Have you brought the fees?" So he said, "Sir, I have no money, but I am willing to serve." So that was also accepted in lieu. He could serve the university in some capacity. So he served the professor for 7 years. And then there was a final test which was conducted to award the diploma or the permission to practice. So you read all about it in those days. And the Gurukula system, very different from this university system. It was always in an ashram type where the teacher was living, mostly in the forest, like Himalayan countryside, like Charaka's own. And the interesting thing is when the great universities like Takshashila and Nalanda, they were destroyed by invaders, the Gurukula system survived. That is how. If it was only university-based, there would have been no Ayurveda today. But the Gurukula system at the grassroots, thousands of them, they survived. Not only the 900 years, the Islamic rule, when there was a benign neglect of Ayurveda, then the European, from the 19th century, for 2 centuries, there was an active suppression of Ayurveda by the British administration. But in spite of all this Gurukula system survived. Now, there is a lesson for us in this. And how did it survive without any kind of state support? State discouragement, if you like. Mainly because of the inherent strength. There is some scientific strength in Ayurveda for its survival. And second, the support from the common people. They would always go for because without these two, it could not have survived. So therefore, any system of knowledge which has no indigenous base, it is very unlikely to survive in this country. That's a lesson we learn here. There must be some inherent strength for a system of knowledge to survive and grow in this country. Now, the modern medical education, of course, everybody knows about it. It dates back to the 19th century, the second half especially, when the British administration, they established medical colleges starting with Calcutta, Madras, Bombay. And this was warmly received by the native, the Indians. Even though we had our own system, when the British started the first medical college in Calcutta, as you know, the first year there is a dissection of the cadaver. And in India, we have all these taboos about touching the dead body. So the British were greatly worried whether this type of education will be accepted by the Indians. And the first dissection was done by a man called Madhusudan Gupta, the first Bengali to do the dissection. With great trepidation, everybody was worried how it is he's going to take a knife and cut his body, but he did it. But from the second year onwards, 100 dead bodies were dissected. So the prejudice disappeared overnight. The welcome was total for modern medical education. And Medical Council of India, the act was passed in 1933, but it came into existence in 1934. It was amended in 1956, further amendments in 64, 93, 2001, and finally, in the Platinum Jubilee year, the whole thing was repealed. That is where we are today. Now, the main objectives of the Medical Council of India, when it was established by the British, was maintenance of uniform standards of education at undergraduate and postgraduate level, recommending the recognition or derecognition of Indian and foreign medical qualifications, registration of medical graduates, and operating a reciprocity protocol with other countries in this field. But after this, the original act was passed, subsequently at various times the government would bring in regulations and add on to these a series of functions about disciplinary action, about postgraduate degrees. So many things have been added on to the functions of the Medical Council in an ad hoc manner, depending if there is a demand, there is a response. It was usually a regulation adding on to the functions of the Medical Council. And the functions of the Medical Council, it was originally conceptualized both as a regulatory body and a promotive body. Both these roles were envisaged. But in actual fact, the promotive functions took a back seat over the years. And in fact, the only promotive function in the recent years, it was only giving some money for various organizations like IMA to conduct continuing medical education programs. Otherwise, it was primarily a regulatory body. And it is very clear because the advances in medical education, as I'll have occasion to deal with later, we cannot really claim any great advances in medical education came from India in spite of having such a very large system as the Vice-Chancellor referred to. We have cosmetic changes, but nothing significant, which the world takes notice of. And the challenges in medical education, what we face, some of these themes will come again and again. One is the isolation from the university mainstream. This is a problem which continues even today, and there are several reasons for it. It seems like it is irrevocable today. But in the university system, as you know, we follow the affiliate colleges system in India, even though it was condemned by the Radhakrishnan Commission, by the Kothari Commission. They all wanted to get rid of this affiliate system, but we cannot get rid of it. So there are universities with 700 colleges affiliated, and so on. Now, when it happens like that, a university, as the governing bodies like syndicate, senate, and so on, when they are dealing with problems of these affiliate colleges, their examinations, various problems associated, the medical college may be 2 or 3. So what generally happens in the university system, when all these other faculties, other colleges, their problems are discussed, the medical, it doesn't get any attention really. And the second problem is, the medical college, unlike other colleges, it has a very large hospital, and that dominates the medical college and medical education. So the problems related to hospital management, hospital quality, all these, there is no proper forum in the university to voice these. This is another reason why the medical colleges, medical education tended to drift away from the mainstream of education. In that process, both are impoverished, which I will talk about later. It is a great tragedy actually, because university, as Professor Yashpal's report says, it is a comprehensive term. It comprehends all types of knowledge, not just humanities. It's science, medicine, engineering, law. That is what university is all about. But somehow in India, we have managed to fragment them to such an extent. Now we have medicine, now we have pharmaceutical sciences. They're all becoming smaller and smaller, becoming universities. Now that is one problem that we have, a basic problem. The second problem in medical colleges, the entry point is 10+2. Now 10+2, as you know, now there are entrance examinations, so the students are sharply focused. They want to pass this entrance examination to get into the medical college. It's highly competitive. And they have physics, chemistry, biology, mathematics. All the rest of, all the other subjects, they are completely ignored. They lack a liberal base when they come to a medical college. And see the contrast with a highly technologically oriented country like the United States. There they insist, only after a first degree they come to the medical college. So they are mature, they have a certain amount of liberal education. And in addition to this, famous institutions like Johns Hopkins Medical School, very highly competitive entrance examination. But once a student gets entrance admission to Johns Hopkins, they are encouraged to take a year off and go on to do archaeology or sociology or music, whatever, so that they have 1 year they should spend in liberal studies. They encourage students to do this. And the reason being, they want well-rounded individuals to join the medical school. Now, what we are doing is exactly the opposite. That is the second problem, the lack of a liberal base. Students come sharply focused on medicine, they become highly skilled technicians. They're not aware of the society, they're not aware of the environment, and that greatly discourages originality, original thinking, and many other problems. Now, the third is the right blend. In medicine, we have on the one hand public health, family medicine, rural healthcare, all those which are the dominant issues in India. But at the same time, we also have great advances taking place in medicine. We cannot deny that. We are talking about medical tourism. We've got corporate hospitals, open heart surgery, transplantation, all kinds of things are happening in this country. And millions of people, maybe 10 or 15% of Indians, are using those services. Now, medical students should have some knowledge about these also. But how do you bring about a balance, a healthy balance between these two, which are in a way opposed to each other, but we have to reconcile them in a medical education system without affecting the basic skills of a doctor. Now, these are some of the major challenges which some of these themes will keep coming again and again. Now, if you look at the undergraduate and postgraduate, these are sharply distinguished in medicine. The undergraduate education is essentially you take this 10+2 promising human material and you mold them into a sculpture, a human being. That's the first stage. The whole purpose is a general promising material. You are sculpting an individual, a physician, who can safely practice medicine on the public. That is the aim of undergraduate medical education, who should have the basic knowledge, the basic skills, the basic attitudes, how to talk to a sick person, how to talk to the relatives of a dying patient. These are something which you have to educate. It's not easy to talk to them, but that is also part of education. So that is all in the undergraduate level. But the postgraduate level, it is an act of refinement, because we need, from this basic material sculpture that you have developed, you need medical educationists, you need teachers, you need medical scientists, you need surgeons, physicians, all sorts of specialists. That is a subsequent act of refinement. But the important thing is, if the first prototype that you have sculpted, if that is defective, there is no way the refinement is going to give you a good specialist. So the undergraduate, that development is extremely important. Now this is the pattern just to familiarize the non-medical audience here. The preclinical is 1 year, where we have anatomy, biochemistry, physiology. These are the basic subjects. And note here, these are actually science subjects, like anatomy. It's not only human beings who have anatomy. The dog has anatomy, the fish has anatomy. So it is a comparative anatomy. If you look at the whole spectrum of anatomy in biology, human anatomy is a very small part. Similarly with physiology or biochemistry. So when you look in the context of evolution, these are scientific subjects. We take a little bit for the purpose of medical education. The second, paraclinical, which is a little closer to the practice of medicine, where we have pathology, the study of diseases, microbiology of organisms. Again, remember, these are all science subjects, like microbiology. This is a very vast subject. It's not only human beings who have microbes. So again, we only look at the human part of microbiology, or pathology for that matter, pharmacology, community medicine. Now here we are coming closer to human practice, community medicine, and forensic medicine. And forensic medicine, again, forensic science. That's a very big subject. We take the human part of it, so it becomes forensic medicine. So essentially, these are all scientific subjects, a little closer to the practice of medicine. And the last 2 years, clinical, these are the medicine proper. We have medicine, we have surgery, obstetrics and gynecology, pediatrics, and many other subspecializations. So this is the pattern of education that we follow in India, approved by the Medical Council. And this is followed by 1 year of internship. Then only they are eligible to get the degree. Internship is the time when they spend 2 months, 1 month in different specialities. They actually get hands-on experience. But unfortunately in India, what we have managed to do is internship. We have defeated the very purpose, because as soon as they finish the 4 years, they start working on the entrance examinations for postgraduate degrees. So you will not see the students, the interns in the wards. looking at patients. They'll be sitting and reading in the library. So we have basically frustrated the whole purpose of internship. Now the undergraduate medical education, the Medical Council, there was a meeting in 1994, they recommended active learning. Instead of giving lectures like we used to have 55 years ago, medicine was taught in the form of lectures. That should be discouraged. There should be active learning. That was encouraged. Integrated teaching at the level of the organ. So when you are discussing the anatomy of the liver, why not discuss the pathology of the liver also, diseases affecting the liver, treatment of liver diseases. That makes it much more interesting. So the integrated type of teaching at the level of the organ, at the level of a disease, of a process, etc. And medical education departments to train teachers. This is what I was telling our distinguished Vice-Chancellor. It was recommended by this particular workshop that there should be medical education departments in all medical colleges. But as a matter of fact, less than 5% of the medical colleges have medical education departments. So somebody who is appointed, I was appointed as an assistant professor of surgery many years ago. I had absolutely no training to teach surgery. So it would have been nice to have some kind of training, but all these recommendations which were made, they have been hardly implemented. That is the record of it. Now the major concerns in undergraduate medical education, that is important. Now the point which I raised earlier, the ratio of rural health, public health, and science and technology in a physician's training, what is the right kind of ratio? Is it 50-50? Is it 70-30? Now that kind of ratio, we have failed to work it out. Even though from Board Committee, we had a series of big committees, Board Committee, R.V.R. Committee, Bajaj Committee, etc. All these committees have recommended that we should have these community physicians, social medicine, etc. Because 70% of Indians live in villages, medicine has to be accessible to them, so that must give priority. That balance we have not been able to achieve. The second, to promote an inquiring mind among the young physicians. This is the point which I made. At 10+2, the students who come, they are very bright students who manage to come into medicine. But their inquiring mind begins to become sterile very quickly. I want to give one or two examples. Incidentally, it is good to remember Western medicine came to India in the 19th century. But in 2 centuries, I cannot think of any advanced contributions made by an Indian physician, whether in diagnosis, whether it is in concepts, whether it is in technology, which has had a global impact. Something developed by an Indian, something conceptualized by an Indian, being used all over the world, like Raman spectroscopy. It was discovered by C.V. Raman in Calcutta, but it is used all over the world today. You cannot practice physics without Raman spectroscopy. Is there an equivalent in medicine, 200 years? The fact is there is none. That's something we should recognize. And the inquiring mind, I have a personal, very vivid experience. Some 20 years ago, in Bombay, the Indian Academy of Sciences, Bangalore, they had a practice at that time. The council members of the academy, they had to give 2 lectures in 2 institutions selected by the academy. And one will be an ordinary college, the other will be a professional institution. So in my case, the academy asked me to give a lecture in the Sophia College, Bombay, which is a college, on a subject, cardiology, which was my subject. But I had to choose a subject which would be intelligible and interesting to the college students. And the second lecture was to be given before a medical audience, which was in Nair Hospital Medical College, 2 consecutive days. And the first lecture in the Sophia College, Dr. Chidambaram was chairing the meeting. I chose, these are all young girls, no use talking about heart disease. So I chose the subject, heart as a pump. It's an extraordinary pump, how this functions. It doesn't have fatigue. It starts beating, even in the mother's uterus, the heart starts beating, the fetus. Almost 6 weeks, you can see it beating. It keeps on beating. The valves open and close 100,000 times a day. In 10 years, it is 400 million times it is opening and closing. And we are all sitting here, it is pumping 5 liters. But suppose there is some kind of crisis, people have to run away from here. In no time, it will be pumping 10 liters, 12 liters a minute. Which pump can do this? It's an extraordinary pump. So I talked for 45 minutes on heart as a pump. Then the questions, they went on and on. Very interesting questions, half an hour. Finally, there was a nun, the principal. She said, "Doctor, we have to stop. Otherwise, these girls will never stop." I'll never forget that. That was the extent of curiosity, inquisitiveness. The next day, in Nair Hospital, I gave a lecture on a type of heart muscle disease in which we were working very hard at that time, very interesting findings on a disease called endomyocardial fibrosis. And Dr. K.G. Nair was chairing the meeting. I spoke for 45 minutes. Questions? No questions. I'll never forget that. Here, these are the same Sophia College girls are coming and joining the medical college. But in a matter of few years, we have killed their inquisitiveness. Now, this is what happens, that inquiring mind. How do you encourage that? How do you nurture that? That is the basis of all creativity, all research. That is a very big problem that we have to face. Second is promoting values like compassion, probity, and other ethical values. Another very, very big issue today. I don't have to say that, the dismissal of the medical council itself. Now the problem is made much worse because here we have to somehow convey this to these young people. You have to be merciful in a merciless environment. You have to be honest in a dishonest environment. So this is the problem. In a very adverse environment, you have to cultivate these values. This is another problem which we have not overcome. And the third, the last is the promote lifelong learning. It has to become second nature. It's part of the inquiring mind, not just to attend a CME to get a certificate. I don't mean it in that sense. That is necessary. But you have to do much more than that. Your learning only ends with your death. So that attitude, a philosophy of life, that learning, it is good in itself. We need to do that. That has to be cultivated. And that, again, is a major problem in undergraduate education, because if you don't cultivate these at postgraduate level, certainly they are not going to do any of this. And then going on, the current status of undergraduate education, as I mentioned, there are a number of committees have mentioned, recommended that rural health, public health, that should be emphasized. But the fact of the matter is community medicine has the least priority in a medical college today. If you ask medical students how many of them would like to specialize in community medicine, you will hardly find any takers. And there are many reasons for it. One of them, they are practical reasons. Even if there are students, I don't believe they are not idealistic. Because in 1994, I went to Manipal. The next year, we wanted to start a Center for Humanities in Manipal. And to start that as an inaugural, I invited M.N. Srinivas, one of the most outstanding sociologists of India. I invited him to go and give a lecture on village India. And the hall was packed. And he gave an extraordinarily brilliant lecture, inspiring. Now, what happens these inspired students when they come out? Suppose they want to choose public health. There is no public health cadre in Karnataka or anywhere in India. Somebody who chooses medicine or surgery, he can go on to civil surgeon or whatever. There is a cadre for him to go up. Whereas in public health, there is no such cadre. In Karnataka, they used to have one, but some 30 years ago, they abolished it. So there is no cadre for them. And when they look at the top positions, DGHS, DHS, etc., these are all surgeons and physicians. No public health person ever gets these jobs. And if you take public health, when you are posted somewhere, you have no facilities, housing, nothing is there. So how would you expect an idealistic young doctor to choose this line? There are many, many practical problems like these. So that we have not been able to achieve. Second, research culture is lacking in medical colleges. I'll show you some figures, very revealing figures in the next one or two slides. The entire emphasis in the MBBS course is to pass examinations. That's all the interest. If there is any subject which is not related to examinations, you will find no interest in medical colleges. And advances in like modern biology, medical technology, all these great advances which are taking place. I remember even in many years ago, Rosalind Yalow, who had been awarded the Nobel Prize just 3 months earlier, she was the inventor of radio immunoassay to estimate very tiny, small levels of endocrine secretions and so on, proteins. Now she was awarded Nobel Prize. She came to Trivandrum 3 months after this announcement. So we arranged a lecture by Rosalind Yalow. I made personal calls to the university, to medical college, number of institutions. I thought the whole place would be crowded. Our small hall would not be able to contain this audience. But to my extraordinary embarrassment, 4 o'clock was the lecture, and by 3:40, I had only some 10, 15 people. Ours was a small institution. So I was in sheer panic. I thought we had only 50 seats in our hall. So I asked all our nurses to come. They all had blue saris in those days. So I called our medical superintendent. I said, you please send all the nurses. So I was doing all this, arranging an audience, so Dr. Yalow arrived 10 minutes earlier. She could see what was going on. She was a big woman, so she put her hand on my shoulder. She told me, you don't have to do this. And the reason, then I called the professors, some of them, I said, look, I telephoned you, how come your students didn't come? They said, this is not a subject which will come for the examination. Because radio immuno, I said, nobody is going to ask any question. So nobody came. That is the problem. So in these extremely interesting, the frontier areas, there is no interest. And if you go to medical colleges today, in the common room, it is not scientific subjects. Often the subject of discussion is the corruption, dismissal of the medical council. This is all you will hear. Capitation fee, 70 lakhs is paid there. This is the culture in which medical students are being brought up. So this is very disturbing, but these are the facts which we should face. And we have more than 300 medical colleges now. There is a central body like MCI, but innovations in medical education in the last 30 years. What are the innovations? The fact is, very few. I'm not able to. When I read that, like 3 months posting is made 2 months, I do not regard this as progress. These are small cosmetic arrangements they are making. I mean by the example of process. And Dr. K.G. Nair was chairing the meeting. I spoke for 45 minutes. Questions? No questions. I'll never forget that. Here, these are the same Sophia College girls are coming and joining the medical college. But in a matter of few years, we have killed their inquisitiveness. Now, this is what happens, that inquiring mind. How do you encourage that? How do you nurture that? That is the basis of all creativity, all research. That is a very big problem that we have to face. Second is promoting values like compassion, probity, and other ethical values. Another very, very big issue today. I don't have to say that, the dismissal of the medical council itself. Now the problem is made much worse because here we have to somehow convey this to these young people. You have to be merciful in a merciless environment. You have to be honest in a dishonest environment. So this is the problem. In a very adverse environment, you have to cultivate these values. This is another problem which we have not overcome. And the last is the promote lifelong learning. It has to become second nature. It's part of the inquiring mind, not just to attend a CME to get a certificate. I don't mean it in that sense. That is necessary. But you have to do much more than that. Your learning only ends with your death. So that attitude, a philosophy of life, that learning, it is good in itself. We need to do that. That has to be cultivated. And that, again, is a major problem in undergraduate education, because if you don't cultivate these at postgraduate level, certainly they are not going to do any of this. And then going on, the current status of undergraduate education, as I mentioned, the number of committees have mentioned, recommended that rural health, public health, that should be emphasized. But the fact of the matter is community medicine has the least priority in a medical college today. If you ask medical students how many of them would like to specialize in community medicine, you will hardly find any takers. And there are many reasons for it. One of them, they are practical reasons. Even if there are students, I don't believe they are not idealistic. Because in 1994, I went to Manipal. The next year, we wanted to start a Center for Humanities in Manipal. And to start that as an inaugural, I invited M.N. Srinivas, one of the most outstanding sociologists of India. I invited him to go and give a lecture on village India. And the hall was packed. And he gave an extraordinarily brilliant lecture, inspiring. Now, what happens these inspired students when they come out? Suppose they want to choose public health. There is no public health cadre in Karnataka or anywhere in India. Somebody who chooses medicine or surgery, he can go on to civil surgeon or whatever. There is a cadre for him to go up. Whereas in public health, there is no such cadre. In Karnataka, they used to have one, but some 30 years ago, they abolished it. So there is no cadre for them. And when they look at the top positions, DGHs, DHs, etc., these are all surgeons and physicians. No public health person ever gets these jobs. And if you take public health, when you are posted somewhere, you have no facilities, housing, nothing is there. So how would you expect an idealistic young doctor to choose this line? There are many, many practical problems like these. So that we have not been able to achieve. Second, research culture is lacking in medical colleges. I'll show you some figures, very revealing figures in the next one or two slides. The entire emphasis in the MBBS course is to pass examinations. That's all the interest. If there is any subject which is not related to examinations, you will find no interest in medical colleges. And advances in like modern biology, medical technology, all these great advances which are taking place. I remember even in many years ago, Rosalind Yalow, who had been awarded the Nobel Prize just 3 months earlier, she was the inventor of radio immunoassay to estimate very tiny, small levels of endocrine secretions and so on, proteins. Now she was awarded Nobel Prize. She came to Trivandrum 3 months after this announcement. So we arranged a lecture by Rosalind Yalow. I made personal calls to the university, to medical college, number of institutions. I thought the whole place would be crowded. Our small hall would not be able to contain this audience. But to my extraordinary embarrassment, 4 o'clock was the lecture, and by 3:40, I had only some 10, 15 people. Ours was a small institution. So I was in sheer panic. I thought we had only 50 seats in our hall. So I asked all our nurses to come. They all had blue saris in those days. So I called our medical superintendent. I said, you please send all the nurses. So I was doing all this, arranging an audience, so Dr. Yalow arrived 10 minutes earlier. She could see what was going on. She was a big woman, so she put her hand on my shoulder. She told me, you don't have to do this. And the reason, then I called the professors, some of them, I said, look, I telephoned you, how come your students didn't come? They said, this is not a subject which will come for the examination. Because radio immuno, I said, nobody is going to ask any question. So nobody came. That is the problem. So in these extremely interesting, the frontier areas, there is no interest. And if you go to medical colleges today, in the common room, it is not scientific subjects. Often the subject of discussion is the corruption, dismissal of the medical council. This is all you will hear. Capitation fee, 70 lakhs is paid there. This is the culture in which medical students are being brought up. So this is very disturbing, but these are the facts which we should face. And we have more than 300 medical colleges now. There is a central body like MCI, but innovations in medical education in the last 30 years. What are the innovations? The fact is, very few. I'm not able to. When I read that, like 3 months posting is made 2 months, I do not regard this as progress. These are small cosmetic arrangements they are making. I mean by the examples, problem-based learning, computer-assisted learning. Here the student himself is learning, active learning, simulation training for clinical skills. For example, before you do an operation, before you do a procedure, for the first time on a patient, today you can actually do it using a computer. All these are available, virtual reality. But all this is developed abroad. Here we have software, we are considered to be a world power. We have got first-rate technologies. We have got first-rate doctors. How is it we are not developing any of these? Even today, we have to, first time, it is on the patient. The training, simulation training in clinical skills, objective structured practical examination. All this, I have just taken a few, there are many, many more. All these were developed abroad, not a single one developed in India. And these were developed by small universities, not great like Harvard and so on. Often they are small universities in Britain, in Canada, in the United States. They are innovative. And most of these contributions have come from those places. And look at the research record. 1996, All India Institute did a survey. It was published in the National Medical Journal. I took it from there. 135 medical colleges, number of publications, only 66% had no publications. This is the record in 1996. Subsequently, the ICMR, Dr. Satyanarayana, he did a survey from 2004 to 2006, and you can see by that time the number of medical colleges were 280. And you can see published one or more papers, and that more often means 5 or 6. One or more papers published. In 2004, only 120, 2005, 138, 2006, 152. It is a pitiful performance, a medical college publishing 2 papers. Even that is included in this. So the rest of them, they have published nothing. So you can see what a poor record we have in these research contributions. Now, coming to the administration, undergraduate medical education in Britain, our Medical Council of India, the template is the General Medical Council of Britain. But in Britain, General Medical Council, it is a quasi-governmental. Government has a small role, but very little. But they have always, all these many, many years they have been in existence, they have confined themselves to undergraduate medical education, MBBS or MBCHB as they say. That is, they make sure that the persons who get the MBCHB from a university or a medical school, they have the basic knowledge, they have the basic skills, they have the basic attitudes to practice medicine safely on the public. They do not go into anything else. That is all they do. Not only that, only 2/3 of the curriculum they control. 1/3 is left to the university in Britain. In the United States, undergraduate medical education is largely left to the universities and medical schools. And they have, the only control is that by the Council for Graduate Medical Education and the accreditation committees which come every 5 years or so, Joint Committee for Accreditation. Both these bodies are non-governmental. Government has nothing to do with it. These are all autonomous bodies set up by the medical profession, medical colleges. Government has nothing to do with it. But in India, we did not choose either of these models. We have both undergraduate and postgraduate medical education with the Medical Council of India, which is controlled by the Health Ministry. So we did not accept the British model. We did not accept the American model either. We chose our own. Now the postgraduate, the pre and paraclinical subjects, which I mentioned earlier, these are essentially science subjects. And we would expect research. That is the only way you are going to investigate. Suppose a new disease appears. A practicing doctor, he has no idea how to investigate that disease. He sees something unusual. Young people coming with mad cow disease. But the mad cow disease, some of you would have heard that. It is actually a disease like, let us say, Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's type of disease, if you see it in an 80-year-old man, that is expected. But suppose you see that disease in a 20-year-old man, then you start thinking, why is it like this? Suppose you see one. 2 weeks later, you see another one. Now, a doctor sees it, but he cannot investigate it. He needs all these pre- and paraclinical subjects. You need their help. Now, that research, essentially, that we have been extremely negligent. As I mentioned, you can look at the number of papers. There are no papers published. But because the MD, MS examinations in these pre- and paraclinical subjects, they are essentially examination-oriented in medical colleges. They are not research degrees like PhD in biochemistry. It's very different from MD in biochemistry. PhD in biochemistry is a research degree where you have to do serious work, 4 or 5 years to get a PhD. You are an accomplished scientist. You can start doing independent research. You can publish papers. You can take PhD students to work under you. Whereas an MD biochemistry is not able to do any of this because essentially it is an examination-oriented, a career-oriented. And this is encouraged by the Medical Council because to be the head of a department in a medical college, you have to be a medical doctor. A PhD in biochemistry, let us say he has got half a dozen papers in Nature, he cannot be the head of a department of biochemistry. And even the percentage of people, non-medical scientists, who can work in these departments is determined by the Medical Council. It is only a small percentage. So it is actually discouraged. So therefore, this is a very serious matter, pre- and paraclinical subjects, the total absence of any kind of research, and this examination-oriented approach to these subjects. Now, clinical subjects, when it comes to medicine, surgery, obstetrics, now here the quality varies enormously. What has happened over the years, there is a very dynamic private sector in India. I don't have to tell you this. What has happened is great medical colleges existing for 100 years, all in the public sector, they have all been kind of deteriorating. You simply have to go and look around. They cannot replace, there is no money to buy new equipment, so they are stuck with old equipment. Faculty promotion is all based on seniority. Like somebody with a PhD, he cannot be promoted. Everything is bound by Medical Council of India rules, etc. So poor investment, poor administration. By all these policies, the public sector, teaching institutions, they have deteriorated. You go to any Madras Medical College, JJ Hospital, Bombay, any great institute, SSKM in Calcutta, everywhere you will see this, a deterioration in standards. But those are the places which are training people. Whereas the private sector, they have everything. They have got the most modern equipment. Patients are coming from abroad. They are accredited, very top doctors, excellent equipment. Everything is available, but they are not training anybody. There is no approval for training. So we have an extraordinary situation. We have all the facilities and institution doing, that is, 2,000 open heart operations a year. That is not recognized for MCH and cardiothoracic surgery. But there may be a college, a teaching program recognized for MCH, they are doing 200 operations a year with necessarily poor results. And the professor there, he has got 15 years of teaching experience. What good is that experience? But he is the one who will get into all the committees in the medical council, deciding the standards for cardiac surgery. Now we have an absurd situation, we have created it because of this. Failing to take into account what is happening all around us, dynamic changes, they are not reflected in our regulatory procedures. And our degrees, postgraduate degrees, they are not recognized abroad. If at all they are recognized, like a lot of people go to the Gulf countries, and many of them will tell you they are paid half the salary of that somebody coming with an FRCS from England. But they accept it. It is better than what they get here. But the fact is, this is very much devalued abroad. And one more thing, we have a National Board of Examinations in India set up by the government. And that National Board conducts examinations in different parts of India. And when candidates with MDMS from various universities, when they appear in this National Board in the same subject, let us say surgery. I have personal experience in cardiothoracic surgery. People with MCH from different universities in India, when they appear in the National Board, the first time, not even 50% clear the examination. The National Board they used to have the data. So why this happens? Because these candidates, they don't have the turf advantage. When they take the MD or MS examination, they are appearing in their own university. They have that advantage of the turf, it is their turf. But National Board, it is like going and taking the fellowship examination in London. A man from Kerala, he goes to Calcutta, he has to take the exam there, or maybe Delhi. He doesn't have that advantage. So the results, this speaks for itself, the quality of our postgraduate degrees. Now, Medical Council and universities, a subject which is exceedingly important, the General Medical Council, as I said earlier, they only look at 2/3 of the undergraduate curriculum. 1/3 is left to the universities to innovate, to experiment. And Britain is more or less a homogeneous country. What is the difference, Scotland and England or Wales? We cannot see that much different, but they are given the 1/3, they are actually encouraged. Whereas in India, with so much of heterogeneity, you look at Kashmir, Gujarat, Rajasthan, Kerala, Northeast, there are so many differences, the ethnical differences, social differences, developmental level is so different. So you may find go to a place, a lot of mines are there, you will find a lot of workers with diseases affecting the lung. It is well known in Rajasthan, for example. That is not a problem in Kerala. Kerala is a problem of re-emerging old infections or new infections, viral diseases coming, avian flu, all kinds of things. That's a different type of. If you go to Northeast, they have nasopharyngeal cancer, which doesn't exist in other places. So why not leave something for the university to innovate? No, we cannot do it today. We have one rule for everybody, all through the country. 1.2 billion people. There is absolutely no way anybody can innovate. Now, this is one of the reasons, whatever little originality is there, you have killed it. They cannot innovate. That is a big problem. And these are all, I have mentioned the problems, but what's the use of making a diagnosis without suggesting a treatment? So I must say something. I would go out on a limb. I realize this is being discussed today. There are big bodies at the government level. Medical Council has been dissolved. So what should come in its place? This is a subject of hot discussion. But I'm a free man, so I can say what I like. So I would go out on a limb to suggest my own outline. And I will not get into the question what should be its name, whether it should be administered by Ministry A or Ministry B. These are less important than what it should be and what it should do. That's all. I have given a tentative name, National Council for Medical Education. It can be anything else. This is only for convenience. Now, it should be headed by an eminent medical educationist, and it should have about 8 to 10 members, and they should not be all medical people. They should represent biological sciences, para, clinical and clinical sciences, public health, sociology, and technology. There should be people representing all these disciplines in these 8 to 10. And how to make this election of the Medical Council, we have all seen, it is a flawed election. It has not really solved any of the Medical Council's problems. So instead of going on in that manner, or unfettered nomination by the government, one via media, which should work very satisfactorily, is to have nomination from panels submitted by our science academies. These academies have been in existence for 70 years, like Indian National Science Academy. And there is no question that they, even with all our problems in this country, only very good scientists get elected as fellows. That's a fact. It is true, all good scientists may not get elected. But those get elected, you really cannot fault them. It is not on the basis of caste or region or anything, because there is a very rigorous process. Now, if those academies and ICSSR, which Professor Ram Reddy headed, if they are told in advance the importance of this body, and the people who are coming into this new body, they will be determining the future of medical education, future of medicine in this country, so that they send panels of good people. And the government nominates from that panel. So that way we are likely to have the best possible membership of this committee. And that will be the national authority for promotion and regulation of medical education, both. And they should function through committees. I'll come to that in a minute. And these two committees for promotion and regulation, they are independent of each other. And there should be a 10-year review of its performance by the parliament. There should be a parliamentary committee. They should look at how this is functioning. And this is what I'm suggesting. There is a National Commission on Medical Education at the top, and it should have two committees. One is for promotion of medical education. It has 3 constituent committees. They are not subcommittees. In other words, members here may be members of the smaller committees. One is a committee for undergraduate studies. Second is a committee for postgraduate studies in pre- and paraclinical sciences. And the third is a committee for postgraduate training. It is entirely different, but all 3 come under this. They are promotion of education. The other committee is a committee for regulation of medical education. That is entirely separate. I'll have something to say about each one of these as we go along. And this is the first committee, A1, which is set up by the National Council, 7 to 9 members. These are medical teachers, practicing physicians, scientists, sociologists, public health experts. This is for undergraduate education, incidentally. And essentially what they have to do is curriculum development. This is something we have not taken seriously, because many of these curriculum development, board of studies and so on that I am familiar with, these are a few medical teachers sitting around a table and discussing and writing something. What existed earlier, what somebody else is doing, and that is how the curriculum is developed. But what I'm saying, this is simply not enough anymore. What this particular think tank, this board of this particular committee, they should set up a think tank with a few core members, and they should co-opt people as necessary. And what they have to do, it should be institutionalized. For example, when you are teaching anatomy, how should you teach anatomy? Today we want to shorten the time, because that's how what used to be 2 years when we were students, now it is made 1 year, condensed. There is great pressure. Cadavers, difficult to get. And with 250 large number of students, there are not enough cadavers available. It's not possible for all students to get an opportunity to dissect anymore. So there is a farcical situation. Somebody is doing dissection, some 10 people looking on it. What good is it? How much learning do they do anatomy? So today there is technology available like CT scan, many of you are familiar. Now you can take a cadaver and you can take slices, horizontal, vertical, whichever way you like, every 3 millimeters. You don't dissect anything. But you can see much better using this, the course of a nerve, its relations. All this you can see. You can go back and see it again. You can see the right, the left, back, everything, which we could not see in our cadaveric dissection. And if you, in the evening, if you want to go and check once again, you can go and check, which you cannot do with a cadaver. Now, this technology is available today. Now, this think tank, it is for them to think all these. I'm just giving one example. Or joints in physiology. We all learn about joints, how the mobility of the joints, lubrication of the joint, synovial fluid. We learn all that. But why not engineers, for example, they have a subject called tribology. It's a very important subject, lubrication. It's a very huge subject in engineering. Because a lubricant which works very well on the ground here, it may not work at the top of the Everest, or it may not work under sea. So the lubricity is a very important subject, but the human joints, this lubricity, it is working in all these places. How does nature do it? A lot of interesting information is available. So when you teach physiology of locomotion, should we not introduce some of this? Would it not make more interesting, more scientific? Like these hundreds of, whether it is physiology, anatomy, any subject, or take pharmacology, when you are teaching that, when you talk of pharmacogenomics, can you select this particular drug, this particular dose is good for this person? Same drug, it might not be suitable for another person at the same dosage. You have to change it. That decision is being made by pharmacogenomics. Should we really, how much genomics should we teach these students? Now, questions like this, you are really getting into science now, or public health. We are teaching community medicine, but how is it in a country like this? We have Bhopal disaster, we had Surat plague. How did we handle in this country? Very poorly. Even today we have no final answers. We have reports, but we are not very sure whether Surat plague was plague at all when you read that report. And the final word has not been said about Bhopal. Was it MIC? Was it something else? Still the controversy goes on. So that is a public health disaster of the highest magnitude, but how can we build it into our training of students? How do you handle this? How do other countries do it? So therefore, all these questions like these, there are hundreds of them. It is the job of that think tank to look at advances taking place, our own past experience, and build it into the curriculum. And once you have a curriculum, you can even submit it to this committee, they put it on their website, elicit comments, and then do experiments. Teach this particular type of dissection in 1 or 2 medical colleges and see how it works. And then spread it all over India. So therefore, it is an active curriculum development. That is essentially the job of this committee. All the rest can take second place. But all this must be done. 80% only. 20%, this committee, in other words, the undergraduate curriculum that you are developing, only 80% you are doing this. Public health, all this balance is observed. 20% you are leaving it for the universities. Encourage them to come up with their own ideas, their own programs. And if smaller universities, they are unable to do this, let them form a consortium. This committee should help them. Guwahati or smaller universities who need help, you help them so that they also innovate, because that is where progress could come from. And then we come to the committee A2, that is the pre and paraclinical sciences. There is a very grave concern. Unlike I said, you would expect a department of anatomy or physiology, biochemistry, you would expect a lot of junior research fellows doing PhD, a lot of papers being published, but nothing of this kind takes place. everybody is studying for examinations. If you want to change this, this committee should have, say, 7 to 9 members. There should be medical teachers, but there should also be scientists. In other words, a biochemistry professor will be there, but there should also be a PhD in biochemistry from the university. He should also be there. So like that, it should be a balanced membership, scientists who are actually doing research in these areas. And they develop the training programs. And what is important is to develop MD, PhD programs. There should be a clear target that out of this very large number of professors, faculty that we have in these subjects, 50% of them should be MD, PhDs. And here, this committee will have to work with the universities very closely, make it possible for university professors to have adjunct appointments in medical colleges. And some of these MD, PhDs who are working for this, they should be able to go and work in the university laboratories, so that there should be a very close integration between the university programs and the medical colleges. So that if 50% of the faculty in pre- and paraclinical sciences, they become MD, PhD in a matter of 10 years, there will be a revolutionary change in the research climate of medical colleges. You will find their teaching will not be affected adversely, I can tell you, but the quality of teaching, they are talking from their own experience, papers will come, and you will not have the disgraceful picture of 50% of the medical colleges publishing 0. That should not happen. That will change. And they should make these recommendations to the main National Council so that this becomes possible. And the A3 committee, which deals with clinical subjects, again, that is set up by the National Council, 7 to 9 members, but their basic job, if you look at these subjects like medicine, surgery, obstetrics, etc., here the emphasis is not on PhD. Because what do people expect when they go to a hospital? They want to have high quality care. They want the best surgeon to operate on them. They want to get well. They are not really interested whether the surgeon is a PhD or not. They want to get well. That is what the patients are interested. That's what the students are interested. So therefore, here, I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that we should adopt the specialty board system in the United States. It is time tested. We have so many specialties, medical specialties, surgical, and there are constantly new specialties being added. When I was a student, we had only medicine. Cardiology was not separate. Then cardiology is separate. Now cardiology has pediatric cardiology. And medical cardiology has invasive cardiology, non-invasive cardiology. So it keeps on specializing, subspecialization, goes on and on. So when that happens, it is necessary. But how do you regulate all this? How do you conduct examinations? Now, this is not possible for a central body sitting here to do this. That is a recipe for disaster. And they cannot conduct all these examinations either. We have 300 plus medical colleges. I heard Kapil Sibal saying that they are going to establish 700 universities in the next 10 years or 15 years. Then surely there will be another 300 medical colleges. So if you have 600 medical colleges with so many specialties proliferating, is it conceivable that a central body sitting here can set up standards, monitor them, and conduct examinations? So therefore, the specialty, this is not a problem that we are facing for the first time. Others have faced it, and faced it very successfully. So specialty boards are set up by this A3 committee, and task forces should be there. Task force of surgery, task force of medicine. The task force consists of people who are actually doing this. It's no use taking a professor of that specialty who has hardly done anything, a professor of surgery who is hardly doing 100 operations a year. It's no use keeping such people. We need people who are actually doing thousands of cases, who knows what it involves, the stresses involved, the training that is required, the kind of equipment that is required, how much time does it take to mature in that field. All this he knows from his experience. So you need people in that task force who are fully committed to this. Then you also have teachers, others, I have no problem. But the lead position should be taken by people who have hard practical experience. Now they decide, the task force recommends the duration of a training, the kind of facilities required in the training institutions, the kind of experience the teachers should have, the board examination requirements, etc. And we can look at the American experience and modify it as we want. But the basic thing is that boards should be autonomous, and the role of this A3 committee is in setting up these boards and also coordinating these activities of these boards. Make sure the board activities are monitored or accredited. I'll come to that also. All these, that is the job. If there is any jurisdictional problems, this committee has to come in. That is the role of this A3 committee. Otherwise, it is all left to the boards to do. And also they have to recommend the legitimacy of this board certification. That has been a problem with the national board here. Once this board certification comes, it should be considered equal to university degrees. If it doesn't have legitimacy, that is the job of this committee, to recommend to the National Council, which is set up by an act of parliament. They can make that decision, that this is considered equal to university degrees. It has that kind of legitimacy. And they should also prepare, update because we have new specialists coming all the time. Plastic and reconstructive, there is cosmetic surgery. So new specialists need to be added. So updating the list, that is also the job of this committee. And there should be an independent review at the end of 10 years. How are these boards function? What changes need to be made? And in all these, we should be constantly watching what other countries are doing, because this is not a problem we are facing alone. Even after all these years in Britain, the Royal Colleges, they have made so many changes. They had Royal College in London, in Edinburgh, in Glasgow. Now they join together. They are also, after hundreds of years, they are experimenting. And they look at what is happening in Europe. Now there is European Union, so they try to integrate what is happening in Europe. So to learn from others is not a disgrace. We should continue to do, not to copy, but to assimilate whatever is good, whatever is appropriate. And the committee B, this is the regulatory committee. Now this committee is somewhat different from all the other 3 committees, because again 7 to 9 members, but the membership should be the deans, vice-chancellors, experts on legal and financial aspects of higher education. This is something which many of us are not aware of. I was not aware of until I became a vice-chancellor, that to a private university with no grants from the government, all the income has to come from student fees. Suddenly I realized how enormously difficult it is. I did not realize the costing of medical education, because I used to pay 250 rupees every year as my fees in the Medical College Trivandrum. So my understanding was maybe 1,000 rupees, 2,000 rupees. This is the impression with which many of us come. But when you actually do the costing of medical education, fees, electricity, water, chemicals, drugs, patient expenditure, depreciation, I realized it was at that time, 1994, Ferguson and Company did I sat with them. I realized it was 2.5 lakhs a year for a student. That is a medical college with all these facilities. Spending 60 lakhs a year on the library, etc. Very good medical college. That was the cost. It came as an eye-opener to me. I could not imagine that is the cost. So the Kerala, the people who were paying for my education, which I never realized. I thought I was paying for my education. I was not. So therefore, the knowledge of the financial aspects of higher education, that's very important. Similarly, legal, both these. So the people in this committee, they should be very knowledgeable on all these. And also quality assurance and accreditation. That's a different area altogether. We have people in this country, as you know, CRISIL, the hotels accreditation, that's a big subject in itself. All these ISO 9000, that's a big field in itself. They have international bodies. So the accreditation, people who are thoroughly experts in that, they should also be in that. And there should be a national medical register, which is already there in the medical council, liaison with state medical councils, and disciplinary procedures against for unprofessional conduct. These are all the routine things. But the main activity of this committee is this: recommending medical college projects, which is again medical council is doing now based on physical and academic criteria, recommending whether it should be approved. But the most important is the second point, standard requirements in terms of physical academic criteria for a medical college. That committee A has already laid down, but you have to convert this into standards, which can be used for a protocol for accreditation. That is the job of this committee. Based on what is recommended, the academic criteria, various other criteria by the promotion committee, they have to develop standards which an accreditation committee can use for accreditation. A model protocol they have to develop. That should be made known to everybody. That is the main job of this committee. And then, not to stop there, they should have a global tender, in my view. Invite accreditation councils, Indian, British, American, Australian, let them. But they will accredit based on our model protocol. And I'm sure that they will be interested because we have 300 plus medical colleges, we have 600. So these are all paying propositions. So they will come, very good accreditation bodies from all over the world. And they should select from among them, and maybe 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever. That is recommended to the National Council, and they say that these accreditation bodies are recognized for 5 years. So it is open to the medical council, medical college anywhere, to select any one of these. Manipal may select one, Lady Harding may select another. Government colleges also, it should be made mandatory. It is not that government colleges can get away without accreditation. All colleges must have accreditation because doctors coming out, they are going to treat sick people. So it is essential that this is insisted on. And once that accreditation is done, this is decentralized. No longer any Inspector Raj, which should go once and for all. So the central body sitting here, National Council, is not going to do any inspection. They don't select inspectors. It is all done by professional bodies. They go by the criteria laid down, and the approval is given finally by the National Council based on the accreditation report. I also feel this is a controversial thing. I find that the standards, MBBS standards, I have seen some MBBS students coming from different parts of India for postgraduate admissions in Manipal. And I'm very much distressed by the quality, the difference, enormous variation. I'm not even sure whether some of them should practice medicine. The basic knowledge is lacking. How they manage to get an MBBS, I'm not sure. Now with another 300 medical colleges coming, all this is likely to increase these differences. And we are talking about a 3-year rural medicine and surgery. Some particular state wants to introduce it. Maybe it is necessary in that particular state. But in many other states, it is not necessary. For example, a state like Kerala, in my state, I know they are severely opposed to this. The government itself has said, we will not have it. So when this is going to happen, this kind of disparity is increasing in the field of education. I feel it is perfectly legitimate to delink the degrees from licensure. Today, an MBBS degree, automatically you get licensed to practice. That should stop. There should be a licensure examination, very simple, not like MBBS. Licensure examination is simply whether this man knows when to prescribe morphine, when to prescribe aspirin. Simple, common pharmacology. How to recognize an infectious disease, somebody with a rash. He should be able to make out involving public safety. Only such questions. You do not ask questions which you ask in the MBBS examination or postgraduate examination. Simple questions about pharmacology. Where is the liver? Is it in the abdomen or in the chest? Ask questions like that. Simple questions. And you will be surprised that some people don't pass this examination. So a licensure examination for each state council should be due. Now today the state councils are toothless bodies. Nobody really even knows whether they exist, but they do exist. So they should be empowered to conduct these examinations for each state, and the National Council can conduct for all India licensure. So that I think we should bring about so that in future, otherwise we are going to have problems in the next 3-4 years. But in India, we only act when there is a crisis. We do not take any action before the crisis comes. But this is simply to prevent such a crisis coming. And re-licensure examinations, now there is a law. At the end of 5 years, you have to renew your license to practice. But how do you, for renewal, you have to go through certain credit hours of attending courses, etc., etc. Who is going to conduct these courses? Now the legislation only says it can be conducted by medical association, it can be conducted by a university, can be conducted by this, and so on. It's rather vague. But I can tell you, now nobody is taking this seriously, but there is going to be a crisis coming, not too far away, because I have seen a calculation done by a particular group. There are 100,000 doctors. They all have to pass this licensure examination, re-licensure. Now they have to take this course. Now the course can be conducted by various people. So suppose a particular organization decides to conduct this course and they charge 10,000 rupees, which a doctor will easily pay once in 5 years. And if you have 100,000 doctors taking the examination, he has very little investment and there is a lot of money involved. And surely this is one of the areas where you will find, according to their estimate, it was 100 crores they are planning to make. I am myself surprised. But why not have the state medical councils? They should be authorized. They should have the power to do this, conduct these examinations through a university, etc. But they should be responsible for conducting these. Should be specified. Now I want to conclude by saying that this is a very famous quotation from Tale of Two Cities. Many of you are familiar. Dickens was referring to a particular phase in European history, the French Revolution. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom. It was the age of foolishness. It was the spring of hope. It was the winter of despair. We had everything before us. We had nothing before us. So here we have a pair of opposites representing a particular phase in European history. Now here also in medical education, we are in a somewhat similar situation. On the one hand, in the Platinum Jubilee year, the central body representing medical education has been abolished. That is the dark side. But on the bright side, there is a possibility that we could build a very bright future. So the choice, according to me, is very clear, whether we want to tinker with a sorry past or whether you should take the sunlit path ahead. That choice we have to make, but only time will tell whether we will make the right choice. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your very fascinating lecture. It opened a small window into the various regulations and the various ways medical education is organized. And I hope it will set a lot of people thinking along these lines with what to do about these regulations, how should we proceed further. I now request the Honorable Vice-Chancellor to present Professor Valiathan a memento as a token of our appreciation and gratitude. I suppose there's some time, some of the audience might want to ask a couple of questions. There would be time for about, say, 3 or 4 questions at the most.
How distance education, in the present scenario, how distance education can play a role to lead the medical education in India?
I think that is a question the IGNOU staff should be able to answer it better. But all I can say is distance education has a very important role in the sense institutions, brick and mortar, to reach 1.2 billion people. You know, it is physically not possible. So we have to have distance education, but how to apply that in undergraduate, postgraduate levels. Now that is something which I talked about a think tank. It is not something which we can sit around here and solve that problem. It really requires a lot of research, sometimes even experimental research, before you can come up with that solution. So is there a place for it? Yes, very definitely. But how to do it, that is something which a think tank alone can do it.
Sir, is there any health hazard in using the mobile phones? If yes, to what extent? And how it can be lessened or reduced? Thank you.
I have only seen, I'm not a specialist in this area, but mobile phones, from what little I know, only from like Economist and journals like that, as far as I know that most of us who use cell phones, the danger is practically nil. But there are people who use it extensively all the time. Now there I believe there are some possibilities affecting the brain function, but the evidence again is lacking. But that concern is there. But you should ask somebody who is really a specialist. That has very little to do with medical education, because mobile phones, that they are not the best tools for medical education.
But don't quote this.
I have one question. If we see the medical science 20 or 30 years back, then we all know that most of the renowned doctors were from all India of medical science and post PGI from Chandigarh or from renowned medical colleges. We all know that Dr. Venugopal, he was working at AIIMS, and nowadays the most of the renowned doctors like Dr. Trehan, then Dr. Kaul, renowned doctor, they are all working in the private hospitals. Is it due to lack of recognition in the government organizations or some other reason?
You know, some years ago, I was asked to review the All India Institute. At that time, I looked at what is called the attrition rate, the number of doctors leaving, and it was less than 10%, which is internationally acceptable. Even Western universities, less than like 9-10% faculty leaving, it is not regarded as a cause for alarm. The second point is, are these people leaving to go to other medical colleges? That is something important. Suppose somebody leaves PGI Chandigarh or All India Institute. Are they going into other teaching institutions in private sector, medical colleges and so on? That is not the case. These are people going into private sector, corporate hospitals, where, as I mentioned earlier, their facilities in terms of equipment especially, working conditions, they are far superior, because government has not made enough investment in these large teaching institutions. The government, you cannot blame them, because government has its own priorities. They have to, like rural primary health center, there is absolutely nothing there. So they have got to emphasize those. So when the investment is less, they cannot replace the equipment, update the practices, the clinical staff support may not be adequate, then the doctors leave. And also, they may not get the kind of promotions which they deserve, but they cannot get, because government cannot keep on creating positions. So there are a number of issues based on which people leave, but I don't believe it is, at least my experience when I did the review, both in PGI as well as All India Institute, is less than 10%.
Okay, this is maybe the last question. Okay, this is the last question.
Over TV.
Death due to kidney pain or liver pain, I won't get. What is the problem of is there any scientific attachment with the heart to heart?
No, if you hear, sorry, could you repeat that? If you hear somebody died of kidney failure, you don't get kidney failure.
I won't get kidney pain. But heart I feel some heart pain. Is it a natural?
No, because heart, as you know, it is a highly emotive subject. Have a heart. You're hard-hearted, gentle. So, but on the other hand, heart is simply a mechanical pump. It has nothing to do with emotion. It has no other function. It is a muscular organ. It keeps on pumping blood. That's all it does. It has nothing to do with emotion. But all through, even from our own ancient Ayurveda time, heart, in fact, Ayurveda regarded heart as the seat of consciousness. Brain was not the seat of consciousness. In Ayurveda, you will be surprised to hear, heart is regarded as the seat of consciousness, of emotions. So in all cultures, heart has somehow been associated with emotion. So when you hear somebody, naturally you will respond. Whereas kidney has no such emotional component.
As we come to the end of this program.
My congratulations to you, Professor Valiathan. The lecture was very lucid and I listened to you very carefully. Sir, my submission is that how much space you are providing for the concern that you have for the rural people of this country. Because the policies are made, the organizations are restructured, looks very high sounding, but how much heart you have and what you have put for the rural people which form the 80% population of this country. Thank you.
I would only say, I have not studied that question. I mentioned this is that think tank which should do this job. But I can tell you this. Often we are quoting the reports of committees like Board Committee and so on. Committees reports which are 30, 40 years old. Today, if you look at the rural-urban composition in India, published figures by the Planning Commission, they're entirely different from what it was at that time. Our urban population is bursting. And there is a huge component of urban poor. Now, these are not reflected when we are still quoting the Board Committee report or Budaliar Committee report. So, this think tank, I feel, the answer to your question is what proportion, what percentage of importance. That depends on the demography of this country today, not what existed 40 years ago. So, if you find today that the urban population in India is 1/3, this 70-80% all the time we are quoting. Mahatma Gandhi said that. We are still quoting that. But India has changed. So you may well find, I remember reading some planning commission or some working group, they had said 1/3 is urban. If that is indeed correct, maybe it is much more. That was several years ago. Today it may be 35% is urban, rural population, because the rural population is all moving into urban areas. So there is a need for this think tank to get the figures today with Planning Commission and then assign the relative importance. That's the only way it can be done.
Now as we come to the end of this function, may I request Professor Agarwal to present a formal vote of thanks.
Dignitaries on the dais, invited guests, members of the Board of Governors from Medical Council of India. We have at least one at the moment, Dr. Salhan, our old friend, Professor Deka, Director, All India Institute of Medical Sciences, Vice-Chancellors, Professor D.K. Chaudhary, Dr. Lata Pillai, Professor Om Prakash Mishra. I don't see Dr. Srisa-An. Directors of the schools and heads of divisions, my colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I would like to profusely thank Dr. M.S. Valiathan for his stimulating and absorbing and very thought-provoking lecture on the eve of the Professor G. Ram Reddy Memorial Lecture. On the Professor G. Ram Reddy Memorial Lecture today that we have. Actually, he has given us an in-depth analysis of the chronological analysis of the developments in medical education in the country ever since we became independent, even before independence, as well as the developments in Ayurveda. He has not only gave the problems which are facing the medical education in our country, but also gave a prescription as to how we can improve upon the situation in the coming years. And I'm very happy that we have the luminaries present here, especially from the Board of Governors of Medical Council of India, and I'm sure, sir, that you will take the issues and debate them as a think tank that he has been referring to in the Medical Council. In fact, Dr. Salhan, for your information, is very intimately involved, very deeply involved with the School of Health Sciences, right from the beginning when we started 15 years back developing the postgraduate diplomas in maternal and child health. You will be very happy to note that he was the program in charge when he was the professor and head of the Department of Pediatrics in Safdarjung Hospital and as the medical superintendent of Safdarjung Hospital. So, sir, we are very privileged to have you here today in our midst. And I have a selfish motive also that the School of Health Sciences, what Dr. Jana has said, has been developing a lot of programs through distance education. And sir, our distance education is not correspondence courses. In fact, about 50% of the training is hands-on skill development, and we attach the students to medical colleges, district hospitals for their hands-on skill development under the existing faculty, because we don't duplicate our own, as brick and mortar, as you said. So it's very cost economic model, which the Medical Council of India, I think he will be able to champion our cause when it comes to the, we are through our Vice-Chancellor, Honorable Vice-Chancellor, we are going to request the Medical Council of India to give us an opportunity to make a presentation before the Board of Governors, because we have both part-time, we have both distance learning as well as full-time. Our postgraduate diploma in clinical cardiology is a 2-year full-time program in non-invasive cardiology. So we are going to develop many such more programs, because at the moment, the 65 or 70% or 80%, whatever you call the population, which is the have-not. Even in the urban, sir, as you say that urban population is bursting, the urban poor also are equally bad as the rural population, because they have hardly any access to the health services in the bursting, metro towns that we have in this country. So they are equally bad. So the point is that in these populations never get an access to the services of the specialized doctors. So with IGNOU, we are able to, in at least half a dozen specialties, but whether it is maternal and child health, whether it is geriatric medicine, whether it is health management, hospital or MPH, or now we are developing in diabetes, we are developing in dialysis medicine. So these are the specialists which we are going to train, and they will be available to the average district and small town and will be serving the population that Dr. Gopal mentioned, and we are very much concerned about, the have-nots in this country. So I'm sure, sir, with your presence and with luminaries like Dr. Deka from AIMS, you will be definitely championing this cause. I'm in fact a great optimist, and I feel with the new Board of Governors, we should be able to change the situation in next 10 years. I'm grateful to Honorable Vice-Chancellor for identifying Dr. M.S. Valiathan, a living legend and a doyen of medical education, as you have heard him just now, to deliver the Professor G. Ram Reddy Memorial Lecture. My special thanks to Professor Sinclair. As the chairperson of this committee, you have been guiding all the members of Professor G. Ram Reddy Memorial Lecture for organizing this lecture today. And I personally feel that it has been a very successful effort. My special thanks to Mrs. Ram Reddy for coming all the way from Hyderabad for this, and she in fact always obliges us that every time we request her, and she makes it a point to reserve 2nd July for visiting IGNOU for this honorable cause, for this important cause. Then I would also like to thank all the members of the organizing committee, particularly the Registrar Administration, the Director MPC, the CPRO, and all those who have worked hard for today's function. I'm also grateful to the directors of the schools and heads of division and the faculty members and the staff of IGNOU for participating in today's or witnessing today's function. My special thanks goes to the members of the media covering this event, and I'm sure that the media would give a wide coverage to this presentation. In fact, our Honorable Vice-Chancellor has taken a decision that IGNOU will be publishing this lecture. So thank you very much, sir, for this, because this is a very useful lecture, and many of us in medical education field will be highly benefited by the thoughts and ideas which he has presented. Thanks to all those whom I might have missed Thank you all once again.
I would now like to thank our audience here and all the viewers at the regional centers for being with us through this lecture as we go off the air. And I now invite everybody for a cup of tea and refreshments laid outside. Thank you very much.
Very cost economic when it comes to the, we are through our Vice-Chancellor, Honorable Vice-Chancellor, we are going to request the Medical Council of India to give us an opportunity to make a presentation before the Board of Governors because we have both part-time, we have both distance learning as well as full-time. Our postgraduate diploma in clinical cardiology is a 2-year full-time program in non-invasive cardiology. So we are going to develop many such more programs because at the moment, the 65 or 70% or 80%, whatever you call the population, which is the have-not. Even in the urban, sir, as you say that urban population is bursting, the urban poor also are equally bad as the rural population because they have hardly any access to the health services in the bursting, metro towns that we have in this country. So they are equally bad. So the point is that in these populations never get an access to the services of the specialized doctors. So with IGNOU, we are able to in at least half a dozen specialties, but whether it is maternal and child health, whether it is geriatric medicine, whether it is health management, hospital or MPH, or now we are developing in diabetes, we are developing in dialysis medicine. So these are the specialists which we are going to train, and they will be available to the average district and small town and will be serving the population that Dr. Gopal mentioned, and we are very much concerned about the have-nots in this country. So I'm sure, sir, with your presence and with luminaries like Dr. Deka from AIMS, you will be definitely championing this cause. I'm in fact a great optimist, and I feel with the new Board of Governors, we should be able to change the situation in next 10 years. I'm grateful to Honorable Vice-Chancellor for identifying Dr. M.S. Valiathan, a living legend and a doyen of medical education, as you have heard him just now, to deliver the Professor G. Ram Reddy Memorial Lecture. My special thanks to Professor Sinclair. As the chairperson of this committee, you have been guiding all the members of Professor G. Ram Reddy Memorial Lecture for organizing this lecture today. And I personally feel that it has been a very successful effort. My special thanks to Mrs. Ram Reddy for coming all the way from Hyderabad for this, and she in fact always obliges us that every time we request her, and she makes it a point to reserve 2nd July for visiting IGNOU for this honorable cause, for this important cause. Then I would also like to thank all the members of the organizing committee, particularly the Registrar Administration, the Director MPC, the CPRO, and all those who have worked hard for today's function. I'm also grateful to the directors of the schools and heads of division and the faculty members and the staff of IGNOU for participating in today's or witnessing today's function. My special thanks goes to the members of the media covering this event, and I'm sure that the media would give a wide coverage to this presentation. In fact, our Honorable Vice-Chancellor has taken a decision that IGNOU will be publishing this lecture. So thank you very much, sir, for this, because this is a very useful lecture, and many of us in medical education field will be highly benefited by the thoughts and ideas which he has presented. Thanks to all those whom I might have missed. Thank you all once again.
I would now like to thank our audience here and all the viewers at the regional centers for being with us through this lecture as we go off the air. And I now invite everybody for a cup of tea and refreshments laid outside. Thank you very much.